Hi, everyone. Dr. Tim and Hillary for another Dr. Tim's Aquatics podcast. How you doing this morning, Hillary?
I am doing great. I've already had all my coffee for the day. I'm good.
You can drink coffee all day.
Yeah, but I feel like if I have a full pot of coffee before noon, I probably don't need to have any more for the rest of the day
Hmm.
for the
Not
sake of
not
everyone else around me.
not the iced coffee mocha latte pumpkin spice holiday,
Ooh.
stuff. I made that up. No.
A nice latte would be good in the afternoon, though.
I usually have an espresso.
Ah,
Mm, Just at 4 o'clock. So
yep.
yeah, yep. Anyways, Reefapalooza is around the corner, folks.
Yes, it
They call it
is.
New York, but it really isn't in New York. It's in New Jersey, which people around the area will realize is a whole lot easier and, more importantly, cheaper to get to. At the Meadowlands Center, always a good turnout, a lot of fun. So if you're in the area, you don't have to go to New York. They should call it Tri-City, Tri-State, or at least New Jersey. By the Meadowlands, there's a lot to do there if you're going to stay.
There's a lot
There's
of good restauants there, like walking distance, decent restaurants.
and there's an aquarium in
Really?
the yeah in the Meadow. They call it something or other. Meadowlands Entertainment, right, the big old building across the way.
Oh,
There is a sea life aquarium in there.
I did not realize that. I thought that was just a giant movie theater. Huh.
No, no, there's a ton of stuff. It was supposed to be a big entertainment center thing, but I don't think that ever got started. But there is a sea life, started, of course, like all sea lives, with Dr. Tim's one and only live nitrifying bacteria.
Oh, that's
Plug, plug,
exciting.
plug, shameless plug. Yeah, the New Jersey Sea Life Aquarium at American Dream. That's what that thing's called, American Dream. There's all sorts of stuff in there. Um, so there's lots of things to do. But after an
Yes.
aquarium, it's really nothing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's downhill from there. Uh, anyways, and then wrap. So that's
Yeah.
the next weekend, the 22nd and 23rd of June.
Yep.
You anyways,
I'm excited.
okay.
I always like New York. I think it's fun. New York is one of the first shows that I started going to that I was recognizing people, and the same people come to that show every year. So there's a guy, Robert King, who raises clownfish, and he's always there. And it's such a great person to sit and chat with, and like he's always there. And there's a couple other people that's the show they go to. So it's kind of fun. There's so many Reefapaloozas and like, oh, it's the same show, but it's not. Each of them has a little bit of a different vibe to it. But then there's always like the set of people that you'll see at each location.
Yeah. Yep. They're definitely you just see, that's why you last year. Yep. How you doing? We do all of them. So you start to, like you say, see people from year to year and see how their tank's doing, how they're doing, so it's very nice. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Fun.
All
All
right. Do
right.
we
So
have
we
any
got
news
question
to talk about before we get into the questions?
news.
News. I don't know if we have any like new products to tell people to look out for or updates on
Um,
stuff.
Updates. Well, we were the supply line for the ASF sea salt was a little disrupted. That is back, and ships have left France, and we should start being, you should start being able to get the sea salt again in a few weeks at your favorite fish stores. It'll slowly again be launched across the country. Still available in some places, but some places like Texas were very, very popular, and it sells as soon as we can get it. So we actually have two containers on the way to Texas. So working on that.
Heck yeah.
And then Super Zoo, we'll be previewing and doing some stuff at Super Zoo showing the new products. Um, but right now we're just trying to catch up. We're a little busy.
Like I was just telling somebody this morning, I was like, yeah, we've been busy. It's like the season, like busy season, travel season, show season. It all started April, and I feel like it hasn't stopped since then.
Not till November. Yeah.
Nope.
Anyway, it's good to be busy, right?
Yes. Okay, well, today we've got some questions for you to answer. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
Okay. Question number one. Does the ammonium chloride have a shelf life? How should it be stored?
Okay, so the answer is the ammonium chloride really doesn't have a shelf life if the cap is stored tight. And that's one reason we use ammonium chloride because that keeps the pH of the solution low, so it stays as ammonium NH4 plus. If you use ammonium hydroxide to make your ammonia solution, and you can smell the ammonia, and that's because that solution, the pH is above 12. So most of the ammonia is present as the ammonia gas, NH3, which again is why it smells like ammonia because you're smelling that gas. And that, when that happens, or you're using the ammonium hydroxide and you can smell the ammonia, it can off gas. And slowly you'll lose. I mean, it depends. Over time, you can lose a large amount of the ammonia out of the solution just as it off gases from the high concentrated solution to into the air. All this is solved, of course, if you keep the cap on tight. But basically, we use ammonium chloride, and as long as you keep it stored tight, don't contaminate it, which you would really have to work to contaminate it with bacteria, it should be fine for years and years and years.
Okay. That's easy enough. All right. Question number two is very similar to question number one, except it's about AquaClense. What is its shelf life and how should it be stored?
Again, shelf life is 3 to 4 years. This is a chemical. If it's stored with the cap on tight, um, not in direct sunlight, shouldn't be really frozen, but just, cool, dark place, it's really going to last, um, yeah, 3, 4, 5 years is really not going to be a problem.
Nice. That's always a good thing. Okay. Moving
No,
on
I
to,
don't know if you have because part of this is people, what about once the cap is off? I don't know if
yes.
that's because we
They
get
didn't
that.
say
Well,
that, but go ahead and answer
yeah,
that.
sometimes we get that. Well, what happens once the caps off? Opening the cap and then closing it has no effect on any of our products. I know years ago there was a product we sold at Marineland and it talked about that, but it was kind of it was really a bogus product. And once I showed the owner that and convinced him, we stopped selling it. But the cap has got nothing to do with it. Letting air into any of these, opening the cap isn't going to do anything. What you want to prevent is contamination, which is hard to do. But if one thing you should never do, if you pour it out into a cup or something, you should never put it back because chances are your cup's contaminated or, something like that. So once it's out, it should stay out. You shouldn't put anything back. You shouldn't try to dilute it, stretch it by adding your tap water, something like that. We use purified water to make these so that we're eliminating bacteria, contaminants, and stuff like that. So those are possible ways, but taking the cap off does not shorten the shelf life of any of our products, even our bacteria.
I'm glad that you addressed how to use it and like not cross-contaminating the product itself.
Yeah, we get that where people we're going to stretch this out, and they start adding, and they basically unintentionally contaminate the solution, and you just don't want to do that. Add things to any solution. Once it's out, and don't add anything to it.
We are on question number 3. I'm using Dr. Tim's biopellets and waste away. My aquarium is doing much better, and I'm also noticing that the algae is disappearing on my rocks. Thanks so much for making such great products.
Well, we're ending there, right? It's just a statement, not a question.
Just a statement, not a question. But I like it because I feel like we have this huge line of biomedia, and for the most part, I don't usually hear people talking about it, so it makes me excited to hear people talking about it.
Yesterday, I was visiting a store in SLO. That's SLO, which is what we abbreviation for San Luis Obispo, town in Central California. Very nice town, home of the Cal State San Luis Obispo. I don't think they call it that. What is it? It is Cal State. It's not San Luis Obispo State. Yeah, Cal State, San Luis Obispo. Very much an ag college, beautiful area, lots of open spaces. Anyways, they were asking about our biopellets, and biopellets are very popular maybe 10 years ago, and they kind of fell off. But if you've got a big tank and you're having phosphates and nitrates and algae problems, and you've heard me say turn off the skimmer, don't over skim, don't use UV, blah blah blah, and you're like, I'm not following that device for one reason or another. One thing that you might consider is using biopellets. Biopellets that we have are 100% pure. There's no plastic additives to them. And the reason to use those is if you're going to leave your skimmer, your UV, ozonizer, filter sock, all that stuff on, you're removing the bacteria from the water column. Well, if you use biopellets, you put them in a reactor and you're growing the bacteria on the biopellets in the bioreactor, and they can't be removed or eliminated by the ozone and the UV and all those different devices. So they're contained and will do their work there rather than adding, liquids or liquid bacteria into the water, and then they're instantly removed by all the devices because for one reason or another, you're not going to turn those off. So as this person mentioned, it takes a little bit of time, but the biopellets growing bacteria will outcompete algae, hair algae. They'll make your water really look clean, lower your phosphates and nitrates. They're just a great product and very economical if you have a large tank. So consider that. And I think we have some past videos on how to set those up in a bioreactor. We sell the Bashi bioreactors, which are great. And it can be a great tool, especially if you have a fish only tank that you feed a lot to and are battling high nutrients and algae and things like that. Check out our NP active biopellets.
Yes, please do. I think there's another media question on this list, but we're not there yet. So question number 4. I know one and only nitrifying bacteria stores for 6 months at room temperature and a year refrigerated at 50 degrees, but my refrigerator runs in the mid 30-degree range. Is this okay, and what would the shelf life be? There's a lot of shelf life questions today.
That's all right. Well, the shelf life, once you get below 40, as long as you don't freeze it, the bacteria will remain viable. And I use that word for a reason. They're not dead. They're not dividing. They're in this suspended animation, so that they're ready to go. But what's going to happen is the colder you store them, the longer there's going to be a lag time between when you add them to your aquarium and when they start working. It's going to be a whole lot better than not doing anything. But if you're below 50 degrees, you should take the bottle out, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, um, 10 degrees Celsius. If you are below that, you've been storing them in, at 3 or 4 Celsius, 35, 36, something like that. Um, you should take them out the 1 or 2 days before you're going to use them. It's kind of a shock for them to go from, a 35-degree refrigerator to a 70-degree or more than that, 75-degree, this is all in Fahrenheit, aquarium situation. So take them out, let them naturally warm up, never run them under hot water, but let them just sit out on the counter. Don't have to have the lid open. And slowly they'll bring up to room temperature. And then the next day or so, you can put them in the aquarium. If you go directly from 35 to 75, it's not like they're not going to work, but there's a shock there and you have a better results if you take them out and let them warm up to room temperature before you put them in the aquarium temperature. That cover the question, Hillary?
I think so. All right. Moving on, number 5. I know about skimmers and UV to leave them off, but what if I use carbon on my reef tank? Should I stop using carbon during a treatment with your refresh and waste away? Thanks.
No, it's fine to use carbon while using refresh and waste away. This is activated carbon I'm talking about. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. Question number 6. Hi, I'm having 0 ammonia readings, or maybe it's 0.25, but my nitrates and nitrites are at the highest levels on API for many days. Why isn't it budging? I've been adding a little ammonia and it seems to be converting over. When I check ammonia the next day, it's back to the low reading. What should I do? I was thinking of adding several fish and some Seachem Prime. At first, I was having such high ammonia readings that I had to do several water changes, I think 3 in total. I added turbo start, and that's when the ammonia went down.
Well, the issue is, and this is a very common one, lack of patience. It takes a little time. Then the ammonia oxidizing bacteria work faster than the nitrite oxidizing bacteria. So it's very common to see no ammonia, but increasing nitrite. And we covered this just not that long ago. And now what are people doing? Just like this questioner is doing, is they're adding a little bit of ammonia. Well, the ammonia is converting to nitrite for now, and the nitrite is getting higher and higher and higher. And you're getting into a nitrite block. And some people say, well, that just doesn't exist. Nitrite's not toxic to fish in saltwater aquariums. And that's true to a certain degree, but we're not talking about fish and we're not talking about toxicity. Studies have shown that high nitrite inhibits the ammonia and nitrite oxidizing bacteria. There's a negative feedback there. So basically, you've got to stop adding the ammonia. The ammonia oxidizing bacteria are not going to starve to death if they don't get fed every day. They can go for days and days without ammonia and they'll be in perfectly fine condition. So when you have high nitrite, and sometimes why is it off the scale? Well, depending on the test kit, the scale can be, 1 or 2 as measured as the ion. And that's very little nitrite. So the scale is very small. You're adding a fair amount of ammonia drops. It's 2 parts per million or 2 milligrams per liter. And after just a few additions, you can be off the scale for many test kits because they don't go that high. you keep on adding the ammonia and it just goes higher and higher and higher. So stop adding the ammonia, do a water change. Don't disturb the gravel. Don't siphon clean the gravel. Just take water from near the top of the water column and replenish it with new water. That combination of not adding any more ammonia, reducing or adding water changes will dilute out the nitrite, and then your cycle can restart, and it'll drop. But if you just keep on adding ammonia, you're just prolonging the cycle and really making yourself frustrated. So remember, the ammonia oxidizing bacteria don't have to be fed every day. Resist adding ammonia every day on a tank when it's cycling like that. As the directions, the recipe card says, if your ammonia or nitrite are above 5 milligrams per liter, basically that dark purple, stop adding ammonia. Was I clear on that, Hillary?
I think so.
One more time. Stop adding ammonia. They're not going to starve to death.
They don't need 3 meals a day and snacks.
They don't even need a meal a day and snacks. Yes, they don't need that.
Okay. We are cruising right through this list. We're on question number 7. How long does it take Phos Eliminator or Phos Eliminator Plus to work? I added it to a mesh bag and placed it in my sump, but I haven't seen a difference in my phosphate readings over the past 4 days. I added a 1/4 cup per 50 gallons. Is it possible I didn't add enough?
What did they say they used? A 1/4 cup?
A 1/4 cup per 50 gallons.
That's a little low. We say use 1/3 of a cup for the phosphate eliminator or a 1/4 cup of the Phos Eliminator Plus for fresh water. The other thing is use a bag because that's the most convenient. But if you just throw the bag in the bottom of the sump, what's happening? The water's not being forced through that bag. It's best to somehow spread the bag out as flat as you can to expose as much of the media to the water, or put it in, Marineland made a refillable clamshell device that you could put it in and stand that up so the water's going through it. You need to have the water come in contact for the media to be most effective. Some people just throw it in the corner because they want it out of the way. Well, the corner is kind of the worst spot because the water, all these systems are passive. We're not forcing the water through anything anymore. Those systems, filtration systems used to be popular when I was a kid a long time ago, but they clog up and then you can be sucking the system dry and losing siphon and all these other problems. So the more passive ones that kind of never clog up became more popular, but they're just not that efficient. And if you've got media in a bag, then water's going to go around it. Water will take the path of least resistance every time. So probably you need to spread that bag out, maybe drape it in there using some wood clothespins or something plastic so you can basically try to force the water to go through the media for it to be most effective. And the other thing is just how much your nitrite is. If you're trying to go from point, or a phosphate, if you're trying to go from 0.04 to 0.03 or 0.02, that can be pretty much at the limit of measurement of some of these test kits. So you may not see the removal in the test kit readings because you're operating at the very edge of what these test kits can measure accurately. So there's several parameters there that come into play.
So say they have it in the sump in ideal conditions. How long should they expect to see a difference?
Well, you should generally start seeing a difference within 1 or 2 days.
Okay. I know some I think the pearls take a little bit longer to see a difference. So
right,
always...
the pearls, or our NP Active pearls, trade name for the biopellets, take a couple of 3 weeks because you're waiting on the bacteria to grow on the carbon that is the pearl. But the phos remover, phos eliminator plus, those are chemical reactions. So they're going to happen much faster, but it all depends upon the amount of the target chemical, in this case phosphate, you're trying to remove. If it's a high concentration, you see things quite fast. If it's a low concentration in the point O's, zero point 0, like I said, 0.04, 0.05, 0.06, it's gonna take longer to see the any results, just because of the low level and the lack of the ability of the test kits to measure those low levels.
Ah, yes, that's a good point.
Yeah,
Okay.
like you're operating at the very edge, and many of these test kits, they really, you know, they don't measure the low levels. These aren't analytical instruments, even though they have an LED screen and do digital readings. They're not analytical instruments, and you're not calibrating them, and you're not measuring them against a standard. So, um, yeah, some people get really worked up um, about this. It's just you're not doing low level analytical chemistry in a clean room. Yeah, so
No.
and don't send me that you've got 0.001 ammonia. You didn't measure that.
What if
I'm
they had an
just
ICP test and it came back?
Now you're really twisting the button, aren't you? You're pressing all the buttons.
Okay, back to the question.
Yeah, you wasted your money if you're doing an ICP test with ammonia or nitrite or phosphate. Complete.
Okay,
Yeah.
question number 8. I'm in the process of tearing my tank apart and starting from scratch as I have been battling a really bad turf algae issue for way too long now, and I'm unable to get rid of it. Once I have it all set up again, I will have to cycle the tank as it will be all set up with new rock. In reading your fishless method, you say detoxified or non RODI water. Are you referring to just plain old tap water? If so, that would make my life so much easier as this system is about 600 gallons. Ooh, that's a big system.
It is possible to have a successful aquarium using tap water or treated tap water. But the issue is one person's treated tap water or one person's tap water can be completely different than another. So tap water is just whatever comes out of the tap. There's no water quality associated with, quote, tap water. So to say that all tap water is bad is kind of just a poor generalization, as is, oh, you can cycle your aquarium with any tap water. It just depends on what it is. And you can um, talk to local hobbyists or groups and see if they're having success. Get a water quality report from your local water municipality to see what they might be adding. I mean, just tap water can be completely different. So it just depends. Up um, in the Pacific Northwest, the tap water is almost RODI water in some aspects, but they still have to add chlorine to it. And you got to get rid of the chlorine by either using activated carbon or the AquaClense or something like that. It really depends on your local tap water is the honest answer. I can't say you can't do it, and I can't say you can, you'll always be successful. It depends upon um, what you're doing or what you're looking for and what, you're doing corals, you're doing fish. Obviously, fish are going to be much more forgiving than corals. So
Very
have I,
true.
it just, I don't know where you are, Hillary. Are you west of the mountains?
Yes.
So you get a lot more rain. You're not in the. That's why you moved up
That would
there
be an understatement.
from Vegas. See, and the rain in the Pacific Northwest is it's it's good. It's pure. It's pretty pure. The
Yes.
TDS is really low. There's hardly any calcium and magnesium. But by law, now if you're on well water in that area, or well water's probably fine to use.
No.
Maybe no.
No, it's not.
Why is that? Is it got a lot of sulfur in it?
It's it's got a lot of like the phosphate readings are off the chart.
Because you're in farming, maybe, or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see, that's why it just depends. You really got to know what your basic water quality is. And then phosphate, okay, that's something you really don't want to have a lot of water. But what could you do with that? I mean, you have to kind of look at the economics of, is it worth running that through some type of a contactor to remove all that phosphate? Or is it less expensive to just put in an RODI unit and run the water through that because you've got just such a high level of phosphate in there?
Yes. And as an aside, just because this is something that I'm currently dealing with, I have an RODI unit, but there's not enough pressure that's coming out of the well pump. So I'm actually about to add it's called
Booster.
yeah, Smart Buddy, one of the boosters. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see how that will work and hopefully really improve things.
Yeah. So it depends. Are you on well? Are you on municipality? What are they adding? How, and then um where I am, uh, when the sun comes out, which hasn't, we've had June gloom from April, March. I mean, just Southern California in the springtime can, near the coast can be quite gloomy. But as the temperatures warm up and the sun comes out, all the drinking water reservoirs get algae blooms. So they can be adding copper to it to kill the algae. So they don't tell you that. They don't send out a warning that says, "Hey, we're adding copper." So can you do it?
Whoa.
Yes. Is it a gamble if you don't know what's going on? Definitely. It's just up to you.
Yep. Err on the side of caution.
Yeah. I mean, a choice, use an RODI unit because you're gonna save money and by not having hassles and things. That's the safest choice without having to really stay on top of what they're doing, because the municipality's job is to treat the water and make it safe for human consumption. And they're not going to warn you of what they're doing before it gets to your house.
Nope. Okay. Let's go with question number 9. For the first defense and eco-balance recipe, is it normal if the solution isn't cloudy after 24 hours? My result is a pretty clear solution. Is this okay?
It's fine. I mean, it all depends on the aeration and the bacteria. The temperature is one thing. The colder the water, the slower the bacteria are going to grow. So you're not necessarily going to get this huge cloudy after 24 hours. That's not really what we're aiming for. We're aiming for a little more control. So it's fine.
Okay. Question number 10. I just received the refresh and waste away. I have a freshwater aquarium with a trickle filter in the sump, with a tray for filter floss and pot scrubbers below the tray. I also have a Bashi bioreactor in the middle chamber. I do not, this is in all caps, I do not have the UV light protein skimmer or a filter sock. So how do I use these products in my setup if the water gets cloudy? Thank you so much.
Well, if the water gets cloudy, stop using the products. And in this case, um, if you don't have, well, first thing, water changes. I mean, that's going to reduce um, the the bacteria in the water, or what you're trying to do now is reduce the bacteria. So water change, get the bacteria out. The other thing you could do is, if you had like an old, the Magnum with the pleated cartridge, and you could coat the cartridge with diatomaceous earth. I don't know if that's very popular now. I don't know that there's a lot of filters that do that, but that will really clean up the tank quickly. Those are basically the two options if you don't have anything else. Doesn't
Okay.
say how big the tank is, right?
It does not.
Yeah,
I've got a question.
sure.
You just said something about diatomaceous earth. Can
Right.
you go into a little bit of detail? I'm familiar with using that for like keeping garden pests away, but I've never heard of using it in aquariums.
You young kids today.
I knew that was coming.
So a long, long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far. No, we're not doing Star. What was this filter called? I had one. It was just a DE filter. It was basically a big glass jar and had a net in it. But anyways, so diatomaceous earth, just like it sounds, is the remains of diatoms. If you looked under a microscope at this, you would see it's all the silica skeletal remains of diatoms, and they were deposited in these areas. One of them happens to be coastal Central California, and there's another one in France where the land is white. It looks like it's snowing, and that's where they mine diatomaceous earth. And what you can do is if you have a fine enough filter, a couple hundred microns, see, a couple hundred microns isn't going to filter out bacteria very fast. Even your filter socket, 100, 200, 400 microns isn't enough. When we want to filter bacteria out of water to get a sample, say for biogenomics or DNA extraction or something like that, we're using zero point 0.2 microns, really small, to filter the bacteria out. And the Marineland Magnum filter still does if you can find them. You can put a micron cartridge. If you've ever had a swimming pool, that pleated cartridge that may be, 2 or 3, 4 feet tall that goes into a tube that you have to clean, that is made up of a fine mesh. And this happens in pools, used to, and that same where you would coat that cartridge with the DE, the diatomaceous earth, and that would turn it into a less than 1 micron filter opening, and it will make your water crystal clear. Now, you can only filter the tank that way, depending on your tank, for a couple of hours or maybe 24, because it really does clog it up. Um, and then you take it out, and if you were running a freshwater tank, that's what you would do is rinse that into your garden, because the diatoms are so small that the pests would eat them, and it rips their guts up. It basically cuts them apart from the inside out. I didn't know if you knew how that worked, Hillary, in your garden.
I did not. I've heard it for years.
Yeah. But that's what the diatomaceous earth's doing in your garden. But in your tank, you're coating the micron filter uh, with this so that you can have a super submicron water filter. And this is how when I was at Marineland and we did all the shows and set up lots and lots and lots of aquariums in the Marineland aquarium units, the Mars units, we kept that water crystal clear by using magnums and pleated cartridges coated with diatomaceous earth. It works great to give your tank a real polish. So,
I'm gonna have to go out and look and see if I can't find any of those filters, just out of curiosity.
yeah, I have a micron, I have diatomaceous earth, but yeah, it was very common. Um, Old school.
All right, I think we've got time for one more question. Number 11. My ammonia is not dropping, and I have not seen any nitrites or nitrates. I'm on day 14. What's going on?
Well, that's my question. What's going on? And the reason I say that is if you set up an aquarium and let it run and kind of don't do anything, you're going to start seeing the ammonia disappear around by day 8 or 9. You're going to see something. Is that all the information we have?
Yep.
Well, it's hard to say. One, we don't even know if this is freshwater or saltwater, do we?
And no, we don't have any. This was one of the questions that came in on your one and only cycling video on YouTube.
Well, unfortunately, it's hard to say. If this is a freshwater tank, I would ask, "What's your pH?" And second, first, maybe the first question is, "What's your water source?" Because there have been people in the past that thought they were doing a good thing, and if it's a smaller freshwater tank, they went to the store and they got deionized water, and they added, they set up the tank with deionized water and put the one and only in that, which is a terrible thing to do because the nitrifying bacteria need calcium and magnesium, and they need a little iron and micronutrients, and they need hardness. The complete fresh, pure water basically destroys the cells. Low pH, nothing's, if your pH is 5 or 6, and you might be going, why would people do that? Well, they want to set up an Amazonian tank, and they've read that they live, the fish there live in this low pH, so they got chemicals that lower the pH, or they combine the two, the ultra DI, water that you might use in your iron with a pH down, so now you've got no hardness, no TDS, low pH, and the nitrifying bacteria can't live and establish in that. If it's a saltwater tank and nothing's going on, then is it a bare bottom tank? Because you need some type of substrate for the nitrifying bacteria. And we've seen this in the past where people do buy the one and only and they put it in the tank and nothing happens. And then you ask them, and they had a filter sock, and because didn't have the UV, didn't have that on, or the skimmer, but they had a filter sock. They didn't have any media on the bottom. They had the nitrifying bacteria. The nitrifying bacteria pretty much gets trapped in the filter sock, and they clean this filter sock. So then they just threw away their nitrifying bacteria. So saltwater tanks with no substrate on the bottom can have cycling issues, and it can take them a long time. And those are kind of my best guesses in this situation.
I feel like that's the best we can do with limited information.
Yep. So, all right.
All right.
Well, everybody, appreciate it. Keep your questions coming. And if you can make it, wrap is weekend after next. Come out and say hi. I'll be there, and love talking to people. So this has been Dr. Tim and Hillary and another Dr. Tim's Aquatics podcast.